of a legend, of a sportsman. So without any further ado, let's welcome Carl Tar, World Surfing Champion, Oscar Chalupski.
I'm going to this mic. I've got my own mic. Thank you, Con, and thank you everybody for coming out. Great place. Haven't been up to Hilton for a very long time. My daughter studied down the road there at St. Anne's. That's the closest. I think she's 27, so she's maybe 10 years since I came to Hilton. Thank you very much. I'm going to just talk about overcoming odds, giving a sort of a rundown of my life, which has started many years ago. And it started because my dad came from Germany, came from a place called Mannheim in 1950s, and then came out and he became the legendary paddler that most people might have heard about him, because he's still paddling and he's 85 years old, paddles every day, 15 to 20 Ks. Keith, he's more than you, huh? It's nice to see so many paddlers here, and obviously I'll have to bring in a few paddling stories. But it all started very young, like 7 years old. I was lucky. I had a growth spurt, so I was much bigger than everybody. That's why I won most races, because I was a lot bigger than most people. And this is one of the first races. I think Keith was there. I don't know where Rory Pennyfather there. In this photograph is Rory Pennyfather, Tony Scott, and Jerome Truren. So they're all Springboks, and that's my first ever river race on the Crocodile River in Nelspruit. And I think I was like 14. And the first day I went down and I was on a narrow boat and I was falling out, and then eventually I did that and I finished quite high up. So that was the start of my paddling down the rivers. But it all changed, basically. It all changed because my father was a German and he made sure that you really were precision. So he didn't really push us, but he said you have to train to be good. And I never really knew that. So because I was a bit taller than most people, I used to win because of my size. And he said, listen, if you win the junior and senior Ironman, Nipper Ironman, this is under 14, I'll buy you a racing bike. So that's how my whole life started. And the Natal Champs, which is like against provincial guys, I went out there and I got beaten. I thought, gee, that's a bit of a strange thing. How did I get beaten in the Natal Champs? How am I going to get this bicycle? I need this bicycle to train, to go to school, nice racing bike. And so I decided, okay, I've got to actually focus down. I've actually got to train. And from that day, I think at 14 or 13 years old, I became very disciplined. Because my father used to say, we're going to go swimming at Westfield swimming pool. I'm going to wake up at 5:30. You've got to be in the car at 5:45, because Dad leaves at 5:45. And if you weren't in there, he didn't worry. He just drove out and you left behind, and you realized if you missed it once, you never missed it again. So it came along, I won the Nipper Ironman, I got my racing bike, and then life started then. I realized, this winning is a lot better than losing. And then I started setting my sights on racing Ironman. I was still playing water polo and all the school sports, but Ironman became the biggest thing for me. The Ironman, and the first ever Ironman I did, I came to PE and I raced the junior Ironman. I just got my SPA. You have to have a Surf Proficiency Award at age 14. My birthday's in March. I could only do the Surf Proficiency Award on the 1st of March. I did it, and then 1st of April we raced SA Champs, and I won the junior Ironman there. The next year came along, and I was getting bigger, stronger, and more confident. But funny, I was a bit shy those days. And the first thing was Natal Champs Ironman, and then I raced against a guy called Andy Sutherland, who was the current Springbok Ironman, and we raced. I did the junior Ironman, I won, and then I came out the water and raced the senior and won that. So that was quite special to win back-to-back Ironmans. But the main one was to go and race in South Africa, which was in PE. So again, the only difference between the Natal Champs and the SA Champs is the SA Champs, the junior Ironman is on a Friday, the senior Ironman is on a Saturday. So I won the junior Ironman, and then the senior Ironman is the last event of the day on Saturday. And by then I've probably done 25 events, because I was doing junior and senior everything. So I managed to win that, And this was the article in the Daily News. Some people it got front page, thank goodness. But I was sitting in my Westville home there, and I was watching TV. And remember, in the old days, we had one channel. People used to watch the test pattern, waiting for the TV to come on. And Michael de Morgan, do you remember that? There's some people that are young wouldn't know this. One TV station, and Michael de Morgan came. You won't believe what's happened in Australia. This guy Grant Kenny has just won the junior and senior Ironman 1 month after me. He was on TV. I made front page. And I said, "What the hell is this?" I wanted to phone the TV station and say, "Listen, I've already done this." And the funny thing is that, and that's about life, you know, what do? This guy, I hated him, I didn't even know him. He got on South African TV, I didn't get on TV. And then we tried. We tried unsuccessfully for nearly 5 years. And this is this guy, Grant Kenny. For 5 years, we said, "Come to the Port of London, come to this race, we'll fly you there. You fly." Apartheid in those days, remember apartheid? No chance. I couldn't race. And again, I didn't cry about it. I cried about it when I watched Michael de Morgan announcing this guy, and then I heard stories. I carried on going. And I took on some legends. And funny enough, when we saw the first photograph of Tony Scott, that's Tony Scott on the right, me on the left. And it's funny in life, you think, Tony Scott was my mentor. He was the best thing, he's the best paddler. And I thought, I'll never beat him. So this East London, from Port Elizabeth to East London race, 240 kilometers. And I thought he's my mate. I mean, he spent most days at my house, ate dinner at my house all the time. I thought he's a good mate. And we were racing first day. And just before the end, he would sneak off and beat me by a minute. I said, "What was that for?" I thought we just finished paddling together. Because we paddled together for 5 hours and then he just beat me. Second day, same thing. I'm going, "Oh, this is easy." Paddling with Scotty. We're just talking along like mates. He beat me again. I said, "What the hell? Gee, I thought you mates. What are mates? Why you don't have to beat me? We'll come tie." Next thing, third day, guess what? He sneaks ahead again. I said, "What the hell?" And then I slowly lost a little bit of patience there, and I thought, my gosh. And these 3 days, he's 7 minutes ahead now. I think, what the? The day starts, the next day starts, and he's a lot older than me. He's 16 years older, and I was 18 here. And the next day there was Dave McCormack, Mac Drawback, and Matt Carlisle. All these are allegedly paddlers, were in doubles. My father was paddling with a guy called Paddy Quinlan, and they were having argy-bargy. And then Dave McCormack and Matt Carlisle were trying to look after Tony Scott. And I said, "Hey, what is this? What's going on?" And funny enough, Matt said, "Listen, Dave McCormack, I'm not getting involved in this. Oscar's my mate, I'm not going to do it. Please, let's either sort this out." So funny enough, my father took off and I dropped Tony Scott. With my father, we were going neck and neck. And then Dave McCormack and Matt Carlisle tried to pull Tony Scott up, but he wasn't fast enough. So then the race starts. The last day, I think it's, if my memory serves me, it's 57 kilometers. And off I go. And now I'm cross. I'm going to do what he did to me. And he was 7 minutes ahead. And I came into the beach, and you don't know how far ahead you are. And I managed to beat him by 80 seconds over 21 hours. So it's like two doozies back to back. I was 17 years old. Yep. So that happened. And it just showed you can't really idolize people too much. You show them respect and humility, but don't let them force you into being too much of a nice guy. So I carried on racing, and funny enough, another sport, and we've got Paul Arnott. Over here is Paul Ordner. Put your hand up. This is Paul Arnott. He was my Natal school's captain for Craven Week in 1980. Paul Arnott. And he's here. And it was funny how this all came about. So remember, I'd already won all these races around the world. I'd made the national team, but at school. And we know from HILTON and St. Anne's and all these schools and Marysville College, if you didn't play rugby, you are nobody. Believe me, you are nobody. I'm not getting any recognition in our school, and all that's happening is that all the rugby players are getting all the recognition. Now I'm going to go and watch rugby on a Saturday. So I said, There is no way. You know what I want to do? And these are the exact words. I said, listen, I'm going to play for Natal schools next year. They said, what? Westville's never had a person to even play in the Natal schools, and I was in the F team rugby. That's the fact. So again, like anything in life, and it's funny, people always say, what is the most important thing when you're building a house? And everybody says, foundation. But that's wrong. The most important thing that you need to build a house is a plan. And my whole life has been about plan. You've got a plan. And one of the things you've got to write it down. So that's where I've got a bit of my arrogance. If I thought I was going to do something, I'd tell people. And they say, what are you, crazy? Rugby, Natal. Nobody's even played that sport. You haven't even played it. Come on, you're crazy. But it was funny, I'll never forget, probably Keith, some of the guys have been to my house in Westville, and there was like a beam, probably that high. And those days, you'd worked without a lift in the line house. And all I did was start jumping up and getting fit. Understand, in those days, rugby wasn't professional. They trained 3 times a week. I was training 3 times a day, every day. So thank goodness the Natal schools trials were all day at Kings Park, I never forget, and I was the only guy running at the end, so they had to put me in the team. So I played in that team, and funny enough, we played at Cape Craven Week, and it shows you how small the world is. At Craven Week, Doc Craven, who's now passed away, he knew my father from winning the Burger Marathon the earlier days, so I got introduced to Doc Craven as a paddler, not as a rugby player. But again, I carried on doing things, but always in the back of my mind, when I'm going to race this guy, Grant Kenny. This is an interesting story here, and the only Maritzburg guy here is Jerome Truon. This is us going to Spain. We went to the Selleck descent, and we won a lot of races there. And it's one of the races I came second. I was 18 years old. I was racing down this river, and there's 1 million spectators at the Selleck descent, and it's live on TV. And I was so excited, Matt and I, and against 2 Olympic bronze medalists, and we know we're faster than these guys. And the crowds are going crazy, and I'm getting so excited. I waved to the crowd as Matt says, oh, let's go. And my hand was like this, and I missed the 1 stroke, and we ended up coming second. So these things do happen. These things do happen. You don't win everything, but let me tell you, it was in the back of my mind. Because in the cellar, your name gets carved in the bridge, and my father won the race in 1968, and his name is there, Chalupski, and Kevin Calverwell was a Hilton boy and a Maritzburg boy, yeah, so he won it with my father. So I kept on racing. One of the hardest races to beat people was, there's Herman on the left, there he is there, paddling with Lee McGregor, he's a famous coach for paddlers, and that's me on the right, paddling with my other brother, Walter, and I'm afraid I won that one. We won that one, yeah. It's funny, so we want to go back to the cellar. So in 1985, we trained crazy. Herman and I go training crazy to make the team. We make the national team. You know, it's a big thing in South Africa, making the national team to go to the cellar descent. We get in the airplane, we're all excited. We land in the funny name of the airport, Krababas or something like that, in Madrid. And we go to the Avis counter, and I say, no, we've come to win the cellar descent. He said, yes, but that was last week. We missed it by 1 week. Our administration. How's that? And again, I didn't cry over school. I said, listen, I want to be back. I'm going to make sure we come back. And the next year, 1986, we went there under the banner. Remember, we're still in isolation, 1986. We're still in isolation, racing with Herman for the Munich Canoe Club in Germany. Herman can't speak a word of German, so how does that work? So that was interesting to have one under Germany. And that was a start. But it was funny, in 1983, I'm jumping around in years, suddenly there's a race in Hawaii where Grant Kenny's going to participate. So I said, okay, I better start training. And the funny thing happens is that my old man goes, everybody seems to go, and we get there, and it's the greatest place, Hawaii. When you land there, get the wiki bus. They even, over there, you land, and I was driving the bus. Never forget, this is a true story, driving the bus, and father, Herman, and a lot of Graham Hill, Springbok, Michael Myers, a lot of top paddlers and Ironmen. We get there, and I asked the bus driver, because I always like to be in the front of the bus. Hated in the back of the bus. And the front said, so where are we going now? He says, we're going to go to Lade. I said, what? Lade in front of everybody like this? He says, the flower lay, you clown. So I got my flower lay. So we trained for this race as an Ironman at the Outrigger Canoe Club. And finally we realized, no, Grant Kenny, he's not arriving. He's not arriving. And we have the race, the event, and I think Herman won it. His lead was like an Untitled Chapter. It was only South Africans. There was no internationals, it was just us. Nice place to go anyway. But the end of that race, some guy phones me up and he said, listen, Grant Kenny will be here in October. This is April. October, Grant Kenny will be here because there's this race called the Molokai to Oahu. From Molokai to Oahu, 52 kilometers. He's won it 4 years in a row. He will be here. So now I'm going to make a decision. I was on a rugby bursary at Natal University, studying my BCom. I did 2 credits through the army. I went to the army first. And I had to make a decision. Do I stay and race this guy that I waited 5 years to race for? Or do I go home and do my studies? So, quick decision. I said, you can always study, but you can never stay young and beat people. So I decided to stay. And then I had to find accommodation. And luckily I found this guy. This is his true name, Bob Toogood. He is very good. His name's Bob Toogood. He says you can sleep on my carpet. And that's where I slept. And trained for this race, the Molokai in October. I didn't have any surf skis, so I had to get my surf skis shipped over. The Chilupski, one of the first long distance surf skis. And I was training, and every time I raced against these Hawaiians, they said, no, Oscar, you don't understand. Grant Kenny would win by more. And I was getting so cross. And then I would go, one day I went to a person's house, and you see in South Africa, we still had black and white there in the TVs. This guy had this big TV and had a big picture of, and a big story of Grant Kenny. He had aeroplanes lined out. He was one of the richest people in Australia. Aeroplanes, he had like 3 or 4 aeroplanes. He was like me. I'm sleeping on the floor here, he had aeroplanes, you can imagine. So 1983, comes along the race, you have the race briefing. He didn't arrive at the race briefing, he just sends his people to help out. And I don't even see him. So you fly over from Molokai to Oahu. Oahu's a leper colony, and very desolate. But you fly over the Channel of Bones, which is this rough channel, the Kaiwi channel, and it's rough. And funny enough, when you're flying over, you just see white horses and big waves that look fantastic for me. So you land in Molokai, and the race starts, and the wind is blowing. We start in the Halealona Harbour, which is not the same start as now. And finally, only on the water did I meet this guy, Grant Kenny, who's 3 months younger than me, and he's much shorter than me. And I finally met this guy. He never even knew who I was. He didn't know that I hated him so much, because I've been waiting 5 years to race him. And everybody has to have an escort boat because it's rough. Because, you're going between 2 islands, so everybody has an escort boat. And you can't see the other island. Most of the days you can't see, but after an hour of paddling, you can start seeing the other island. So I go neck and neck with him, and I said, hey, this guy's won it 4 times, he must know what he's doing. So I stick with him for about an hour, carrying along, and eventually I think, this place is Mickey Mouse. I'm going to go by myself. And the big thing in surf ski racing, is, unlike other racing, is the waves are so big. You can be 20 meters from another person, you won't know. So that's why you never know if you're winning or not. So off I go, think that I'm in front, go around. Funny enough, you go along the cliffs, turn the corner, and then you go into the howling wind, like 25 knots, and you've got 2 kilometers of flat water, and then you arrive in a bay, and you hope there's no surf skis there. So I came around that corner, into the thing, and there was no surf skis there. In fact, that year, I broke the record and beat him by 15 minutes. But he had all the excuses. I wasn't training for the race. I wasn't here, I'm training for the Olympics in 1984. So this is a picture. Most people know this guy, Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck, I actually taught him a few times, and he took up paddling, and he bought a paddle from Bob Toogood, and Bob Toogood never cashed it because it had Tom Selleck's signature. So he got a free paddle. You see these rich oaks. I mean, these famous guys, that's what happens. So I went on. It's funny that every time I won a race, there was always an excuse. Brawn Kenny had excuses, and the Australians. So I won seven races in a row, so that's why they called me Master of the Molokai. On the 7th one, I'm training for my 8th one. This is 1990. Training for my 8th one, and the authorities from South Africa come to me and say, you're not allowed to go to Hawaii. I said, what? I'm German passport, how can I not go? He said, no, we know you've been training in South Africa, you're not allowed to go. You are banned from the Molokai. We sent people from South Africa to the IOC Olympic Committee. They wouldn't let me go. They said, no, you've been training in South Africa, sanctions, like what's going on with Russia, proper sanctions for me. So they said, no way. And again, it's one of those times in your life you think, what is going on here? Understand, I never went to Junior Worlds. I never did all those things because of apartheid. I used to sneak in and sneak out. So it's an old story. You can either cry about it, or you can change directions, or you can do something about it. And what I did, I took up golf. So I took up golf, of all things. I mean, I played water polo and all the other water sports, a little bit of rugby, then I took up golf. You know why I took up golf? Because I saw how much money these guys made. They made a lot of money. And I thought, gee. And some of the golfers those days were like this. I said, hey, there's no way a golfer can beat me. Little did I know. So I went and trained. My normal routine was like 4:30 in the morning till 8 because I was working full time. I've never been a full-time sportsman, so I was working. And then in the afternoon I would train 2 or 3 hours. And on weekends I'd do 12 to 16 hours a day training. That's what it took. So I got from 24 to a scratch. And then in Cape Town I was playing around a golf with a guy called Graham Beck. Most people know this champagne. Graham Beck champagne. Very nice champagne. I like it a lot. But this guy is very wealthy. At the time, he was the biggest coal miner in the world, private coal miner. And he saw me playing, and he heard the story. He said, okay, Oscar, I'll pay for you, Claire, my wife, and Luke, my son, to go to David Ledbetter for a whole year. All expenses paid, all flights, if you can break par at Clovelly Country Club next week. I said, oh, perfect, let's go. And I was this close to beating Tiger and Ernie Els. And his mother died, and all bets were off, so I didn't have the bets. So I wasn't a professional golfer. So Tiger and Ernie are very lucky. So no, the one thing that happens when you're playing golf, you probably get a bit out of shape. And it was funny, in 1991, I get a phone call from a guy called Pierce Strader. He said, you know what, Oscar, Nelson Mandela's been released, and we've just been allowed into the Olympics. So understand, my father gave up his South African passport to race for South Africa and never got to go to the Olympics. In fact, the funny thing is, he still now can't get his German passport back. He's got other passports. He's got Australian and South Africa, but no more German. We've all got German passports. He hasn't got anything. So it was a serious call. So Pierre said, I said, no problem. I'll make the team. Don't worry about that. And he said, what are you going to be crazy? You don't sprint. You haven't done it. You're playing golf. And funny enough, it was something that everybody wants to do is go to the Olympics. But the one thing I never do when I make a team, I don't want to just make a team. I want to actually get results. But remember, 91 we got told, and 92 with Olympics. So it was a very tough call. I mean, I met a lot of people, and funny enough, I became the spokesman of the whole Olympic team, which was quite an honor and privilege. And I befriended this lady, Zola Budd. Some people heard of Zola Budd. And the other guy on the left is a guy called Ian Rawlings. He got a bronze medal at these Olympics. And in that same year, a guy called Clint Robinson won the 1,000-meter gold medal K1, 1992. See, I had hair then as well. So after the Olympics, it's funny that I was so disappointed. Can you imagine racing and I normally beat all these guys, and then I get to the Olympics and I come nowhere. Norman, nowhere. So it did upset me. So I changed focus back to surf ski paddling, and this is a race. This is a race in Perth. You can see neck and neck, and it reminds me of a race. Never forget, we were racing, so I'd won 7 in a row, and they eventually let me back. So I went paddling surf ski race, and I think this was my 8th or 9th race. Herman and I, it was the first time back after isolation. Dean Gardner had won all the races. I hadn't come back. So the team was Herman, Brett Pengeli, Stretch Struber, and myself, 4-man, first ever international South African team to Molokai. And we go there, train, and like I normally do, I went there and made sure I got the right publicity. And I always told everybody, guys, we're going to come first, second, and third. I said, oh, please, there's no way. Got all the Australians and everything. So that year is the first year that we didn't use my surf ski. We bought Australian surf skis. And we're going neck and neck. Herman and I first and second. We don't know where Brett Pengeli, but Herman and I are going neck and neck. We're turning the corner. And let me tell you, I am tired. Herman's pushing me to the nth. And I said, why are we racing? What about this? We'll finish tie. Yeah. And he looks at me and said, are you sure? How are you going to make sure? He didn't trust me. I said, no, we'll hold our boats together and we'll cross the line together. He must have been also tired. He said, okay, fine. So can you believe it? Going across the race, we won, holding our boats neck and neck, not 1 millimeter apart. They couldn't even get a photo finish, and we won the 8th together. First ever and only race to do that. Then came along this guy called, going for my 10th Molokai win. So I won a few, I lost a few. If we had all night here, I could probably carry on. But this guy, Nathan Bagley, comes along. He's won a couple of Olympic golds, silvers, bronze, world champion. And he comes in and he says, listen, Oscar, I'm going to win this race. And I'm going to break the record. I thought he sounded like me a bit. And this is us racing. This is coming towards the end. And you can see I'm getting close to him. I really get close to him. And this is tough. Understand, this is 3 hours 20 and you're dead. And what I did on that race, I came surfing next to him. I said, Nathan, she's you paddling well. You must just keep it up there. And he put his paddles down and he ended up coming second. I managed to beat him. There's Clint Robinson. I wanted to go through. This is funny. That's Clint Robinson and another guy called Clint Pretorius raced this race. It was the funniest race because I was the favorite and I was really having an easy time, and then I made a mistake. I was like looking after Clint so much that it messed my race up. I lost about 10 seconds. Clint Robinson came third, and when he finished, he got out and he started punching me. I said, what are you doing? He didn't come to the prize in the end. He was like mad. I said, I didn't win. The other Clint won, not me. You Clint Robinson. He got so mad, but he became a friend afterwards. In these scenes, and this I had to bring up this, I spent a lot of time sort of promoting the Dusi through taking celebrities. My first one was Nas, and this one is Clive Barker. Then I went Dr. Kamala. Dr. Kamala never was off his cell phone. I promise he was on a cell phone 7 hours a day. Never got off it. And when he walked on the portage, it was like this. The only benefit for me taking these people, I never carried my boat. I had so many Sherpas. The guys loved them. Bless his soul. Baby Jake Matlatla did with him. He actually died of AIDS at 42. He was the smallest ever boxer in the world. This guy is the only guy I know who nearly drowned with 2 life jackets on. I never fed. I came down Ernie Pierce Weir, and there was a boat standing up there, and it hit me on the head, so we fall out. I told him, hey, be careful of foot entrapment. You can't believe it. So the boat falls out over, and I say, where's baby? He's not floating down the river like normal people jump out their boat. He was still in the boat, hat on, he was just waiting. So I turned the boat up, he was still sitting in there. And then I could carry him. He was this big. I put him on the side. He said, I'm not touching the water. And I put him back in. And that's the only swim we had the whole day. We shot everything. So Unati, she's the idol judge. She's become quite famous since this. And It's funny that she was the only one that actually trained. I mean, I'll never forget, when Dr. Kamala arrived in the boat, he'd never even seen the boat, never paddled with me. He sat in the boat and he says, "Where's my team?" I said, "It's not 11 people, this is you and me. It's not a soccer team, boy. It's just you and me." I promise you, he thought there was going to be a whole team. Where's my team? No team. She trained hard and she did very well. We didn't fall out once. And she's become a good friend. She said it changed her life. So that was a good thing. And then my 10th Molokai was special, you know, to get to 10 and anything like Bruce Fordyce got to 9. We always see, because we were winning Molokais and he was winning the Comrades, Bruce. And I also did the Dusi with Bruce. And then came in 2012, when I was 49 years old, I said, okay, I'm going to go and race the Molokai. And I had all the top guys, Matthew Bowman at his peak, Clint Robinson, Dean Gardner, everybody who was, except him wasn't there. But he was at home saying, no way he's going to win. Oscar win this against this field. I'm going to eat my underrods. That's his exact words. He was playing golf with Sean McCarthy and Rainer de Toy, and he said, no, there's no way. And off I went, fairly hard race, and let's see what happens.
Here he comes. Now, he'll be a 12-time winner of the Molokai World Championship. Here we go, folks. 11-time, now 12-time World Championship, 32 miles, 3:23. He's going to beat last year's record. Oscar, Dusi, Selleck, Undefeated, right after. I got a big plan. One of our great sponsors here. Awesome job. Second place. Fifth Robinson, last year's record. And he beat the time from last year as well. He gets 3:31. Another 3:24. Good job, guys. Awesome boy.
Yeah, so 12 wins was very special, especially when you're really over the hill, 49. And this is a quote from Matthew Bowman, who wouldn't want to train with me. He says, I was going to affect his brain. He ended up coming 7th. So I didn't even have anything to do with the brain, but I still managed to beat him. And carried on racing. So that was, I still raced all the time, but that was one of my peak of my career. And raced the East London, Keystone. I always had to bring this photograph up because this is me racing in the World Championships in Durban. And the wind was howling, proper wind. We started at Toti and we were going to go finish at DUC. Most people have been to DUC, Durban Underwater Club. And we're coming around the pier and the wind's howling. I had a bad start, take off. We've got every top guy in the world there. And I go wide, so nobody sees me. So I see all the helicopters and all the boats inside, and we get around and we get close to the pier at Durban Harbour. And then suddenly a speedboat finally sees me, and Greg Kitto says, I said, how am I doing? I said, you're coming second. Hank's just there. So I put my hammer down, and I just come behind Hank, one boat length behind him, and they say, stop, there's a ship coming in. There's a ship coming. I said, okay. Lucky I knew the guy that was at the harbour, on the rubber duck at the harbour wall. I said, you know what, that ship's far away. We can go, because we had gapped the field, Hank and I. So I said, okay, go. They said, okay, go. Hank must go first, and you must just go second, and off we go. Remember, we got 1.5 kilometers of absolutely flat water to DUC. Here's a 44-year-old washed-up pattern. This is the current world marathon champion. And the difference is, remember, I had my plan. He went straight towards DUC. The wind was hitting on the side. I went up the pier like this and went across and beat him by 1 minute. His mother, Shirley, was punching me as well there. She couldn't believe. She said I must have cheated. didn't even come to the prize giving. He was like so shocked. Eventually he got over it, realizing, I'm afraid, brains can beat brawn every time. Okay, so that's what happened there. Can you imagine this poor guy getting beaten by a 44-year-old washed-up guy? And that happened. So then from there, I just thought I'd bring you interesting footage. This is Nazare. Most people that know the sport know Nazare. Who knows Nazare? Nazare, where there's the biggest waves in the world, the 100-foot wave. It was funny, I went out there and I thought it was very small until you put a surf ski next to it. So if you see there's me, and you'll see the tower. So this was a small day. The first photograph was on a big day. That was a lot of fun doing that and having fun catching some really big waves. Remember, I'm a 6-meter boat and the waves are huge at Nazare. I've raced all over the place, and this is an interesting photograph of me racing with my wife in the gorge, where it's also on a river, clean river, you see, not like the Dusi, and the wind blows one way and the current blows the other way, and it's a lot of fun doing it. But this race is the start of the doctor. I'd won this race 3 years in a row. The reason why I have to say 2.5 years in a row, because on the third year, I won, and they penalized me and put me into third. But I know I won. Don't worry. I was across the line first, and what a joke. So this is where it all started. Before this race, I had a serious back pain. I thought, what is this? This back pain I can't believe it. It's a lot of pain. I'm in a serious pain. The funny thing is I could paddle, run, swim, do anything, but I couldn't sleep and I couldn't sit. The longest time I could sit in 5 minutes, sit in a car, drive for 5 minutes, get out, 1 minute, drive back. So we had a lot of races in this race week, and I decided I'll race. So we go on the ferry across from Fremantle to Rottnest, this island, and we race back. But I'm in serious pain. I think, should I or shouldn't I? And I decide the wind was blowing, so I said, and the sun was shining, and off I go. In fact, you can see me on the left. I had such a slow start. This is on the very left. That's me, and then that's me finishing. I finished the race, and I said, and I didn't push myself completely because I won it 3 times, what I had to prove. But I always liked to race, and I did race. And then I jumped in a plane, flew back to Portugal, and I had an MRI. I said, this is something wrong here. There's nothing. In between, I was taking every painkiller. People told me, this is what you take. Nothing worked. And do you want to stop now and then, or carry on? Carry on. Okay, we carry on. So I have the MRI, and I can't even lie in that MRI bed without pushing the buttons that it's going to take me out 3 times. And they also give you an injection to dye to see if they can see something. And then I finish it, and I wait in the waiting room in Portugal, and this radiographer comes past with all the disc and the photographs. She's the radiographer, not the radiologist. So she says, I said, what's going on? He says, I'm not allowed to tell you. I said, just show me. I mean, it's easy. There's nothing wrong. So she gets it. He says, you see that? That's a tumor in your spine. So you understand, it's eaten away of my spinal, my spine. It's eaten away my spine, and there's the tumor that we get. So we still don't know what it is, and that's how big it is, pushing on the spinal cord, and that's why I had so much pain. You can see the tumor pushing hard against the spinal cord, and that was giving me pain, serious pain. I couldn't believe it. And so that was the 25th of November, 2019. So sitting there, and then I want to know what's going on. So the doctor, the one radiologist says, no. He doesn't want to speak to me, so he gets Nello, my partner, and Nello Sersky. He said, no, he must phone me and tell me what's going on. He said, no, this is a secondary cancer. There's a primary cancer. It's metastasized. You haven't got much time to live. So can you imagine? My wife starts crying. I said, it's the day before her 60th birthday, and I'd organized a special secret getaway to a fancy hotel on the Jura River, and she didn't know about it with a couple of mates. And she said, no, we can't go. I said, excuse me, I am here. I can tell you right now, I'm 100% alive, and we're going to have your 60th birthday. And funny enough, Eric Borgness, the guy who diagnosed my other friend who got pancreatic cancer, I phoned him in America to get a second opinion. And he said, Oscar, not good. So how long you got? 4 to 6 months? No, I can't tell you, but that's what it's looking like, because this is a secondary cancer. I said, okay, well, that's all right. I've done more in 57 years than most people do in 5 lifetimes. I'm very happy. I've done enough. 4 to 6 months, actually quite good. It's better than getting run over by a bus. And that's when you really think you've got to either take it on or leave it. So there I went and had my Claire's 60th birthday at that fancy hotel. The kids arrived, and I had to speak to Eric Borgness, who said, Oscar, I asked Eric, I said, Eric, when should I go back to South Africa? I was due to go to South Africa in December, only in December. He said, go back earlier and surround yourself with family and friends, because cancer is tough and you need support. And I took advice. So my family came out. That was just before we flew out, and then went to South Africa and went to Grooteskiel. Funny enough, I met this guy. He was going to do the operation to take a piece of my tumor out to see what was in the tumor, to find out what caused this tumor and what cancer I had. So the funny thing, this Professor Dunn, he says, hey, but you look very healthy. I said, look at me, I'm very healthy. He said, that's not normal. So 1 hour before, I'd already signed the papers, they were going to operate, and they always, this is funny, in South Africa and the rest of the world, sign your life away. If you die, it's not our fault. If you catch any diseases, not our fault. And I've signed all those papers, ready to go. 1 hour before, a guy called Eric Simons, he comes and he says, Oscar, I think I found what you've got. You've got a thing called multiple myeloma, bone marrow cancer. So I still didn't know. I said, what's that? I said, how long before I can start better? 1 week, 2, 3 weeks. What are you going to do? No, it's a little bit more involved than that. So how it works is that the first thing they did is they put me into, I've got 3 tattoos, big ones, about this big, because they put tattoos on your body to shoot radiation to shrink the tumor, because that was pain. They gave me morphine. It was the first time I'd slept in maybe 6 months on morphine, and every day I was on morphine till and this is the radiation, that's the radiation machine. 10 days, I'll never forget, the 25th of December 2019, the pain went away. The tumor shrunk enough and I was out of there. But they still had to see what was going on with my body. So this is the only time they kept me still once. Check it out. I couldn't even get out of that. I don't even think, who's that guy who used to get out? Uri Geller, what's his name? Houdini. Not even Houdini would have got out of that. And I was trying. You can see my hands were moving a bit. I couldn't believe what they put in. And it was funny. Con phoned me up one day and he said, hey, Oscar, my Kappa light chains are up. They're 100. I said, oh, interesting. I said, I'll send you a graph. I sent him a graph. So his was 100. This is my Kappa light chains before the chemo. So you can see it 1,220. So he's got a long way to catch me. He's not even close. Not even close. So and the funny thing, I found out how slack I am when it comes to this stuff is that I was at a conference for multiple myeloma. I was sitting there, and the guy was talking. He said, oh, my myeloma level went to 300, then it was at 200, then it was 150. And I remembered, I've got this graph. Let me have a look. Shit, I must be sick. But it didn't really affect me. The same thing is what happens when you go into the treatment. So what they do is build you up. And basically, I had every week for 2.5 hours at Constantiaberg, I would have chemo, 2.5 hours of chemo, and then I'd come back. Most people had a problem with the chemo. In fact, I met this one woman phoned me and said, oh, my husband has got the same as you, had the chemo. And what happened was, while he was in hospital, because the chemo affected him, put him flat out, they said, oh, stay in hospital. He tripped over his drip and broke his back in 6 places. Because bone marrow cancer, your bone is a bit weak. And the strangest story, nearly a year later, I met this guy, Andrew Rudolph. He comes, he said, yeah, that's the true story. But now I knew what it entailed, and I knew why he tripped over his drips when you in the hospital. But he only broke his back in 12 places. But he's still fighting the fight. So after, and again, it's chemo is like, yes, you got a funny taste. The radiation was worse for me because I couldn't taste my beer and my wine. The only thing I could have is Guinness and very fancy red wine. That worked. But otherwise I couldn't eat or drink because it burnt my esophagus. But the chemo wasn't too bad. So once 6 months of chemo, and it didn't worry me one bit, then they do harvesting. So what they do is harvest your stem cells. So you lie there, and you think it's easy. I'm going to lie here. And I thought it was like 2 hours, but then they told me it's 6.5 hours, and I made the fundamental error. I didn't go to the toilet, so it's the first time I had a nurse delving around my nethers, let me have a wee, because I couldn't move. And let me tell you, 6.5 hours like this, let me tell you, it's more painful than you can ever believe. Couldn't believe it. And it was very successful because they got two amounts, got 400 milliliters, because this goes around the centrifugal and draws out the stem cells, and they got enough for 2 transplants. Once you've done the transplant, then you go and get ready. I mean, the harvesting, then you get ready for the transplant. And what they do there, and you can see why I tripped. You can trip over that's what you spend 24/7. You go to the shower with it, toilet with it, bed with it. It stays with you all the time. You walk around with this thing all the time. So I can see why the guy fell over. So once what they do is they try and really kill all your bone marrow, and then they give it to you back. And when they're killing it, and that's a little piece of my bone marrow that goes straight into you, and I had ports in me, so it goes straight into a jugular vein. Again, it didn't really faze me too much. And it's funny, I did this whole thing through the middle of COVID. Nobody at hospitals, nothing. When I used to go for my chemo, I was the only person on the road. Drive, go and have my chemo, come back, have my wine, cheese, all those nice things. While I was there, and I had another friend who was just ahead of me. He was having his chemo and things just 3 days ahead of me, and he had told me what's going on. He was 3 days, and then one day, because we were allowed to walk, because you each got an isolation ward, and nobody's allowed to visit you, and you take all your clothes off to go and visit, and you had a turn to walk, and my turn was from here to there. That's how long our corridor is. The only bit of exercise you could do, and you just sat there and waited for the next thing, and you are at your closest to your death. And this is COVID time, so I never forget, on the Saturday morning, the oncologist, another oncologist said, listen, let's let you know that Anthony next door got COVID. I said, oh, okay. Hope he does well. This is Anthony. He's the guy on the right. He worked for the Kirstenbosch Gardens. Very famous guy. And I finished my transplant, and you are finished when you finish the transplant. That's why people don't like having a second one. And then I was on Facebook, and I see he died of COVID. So that's how close. Right next door to me, he got the COVID and he died. Very nice guy, and it's a pity. So once you've done your transplant, you think, oh, this is it. We're going to be going well. And then this is what happened to my skin. It's called a reaction against the transplant. So that's my arm and my leg. But again, it didn't really faze me. It was itchy as hell, you can imagine. And the only thing I could do was walk. I wasn't allowed to run anything because my spine has been eaten away. And the first walk is 200 meters. I managed to do 200 meters. And you can see I'm in the middle of, that's Camps Bay. Had to be isolated, couldn't see anybody. Otherwise, I'm in trouble with COVID. And 200 meters, I used to walk 200 meters, then take 24 hours to recover. It used to take me 1 hour in the middle of winter to cool down. Heart rate used to go to 170 walking 200 meters. I mean, I ask you, how stupid can you be? How weak can you be? So I slowly just built up, just walking. That's all I could do. And funny enough, they leave the ports in. These are the ports that they leave in. So that was red wine and blue wine. No, Kluvine, yeah. So they leave that in. And only when that gets taken out do you know that the transplant's successful. Because they leave that in so they can just shove chemo into you. And it's a funny thing that happens, you know. Most people get one cancer, I get two. So skin cancer arrives. And the first thing they do is they chop a bit of my ear and they take it. Then they chop my shoulder out. Then they chop the back on my back out. They take all these pieces out. And obviously very good. It saves me on weight. Took all these pieces out. Finished. Because it was funny. I would walk into this plastic surgeon's office. He said, "Oh, you've got to take all these." And yeah, I said, and I'm sitting there. He said, "I can make an appointment." I said, "No, I don't want an appointment. Do it now." So he just injected and did it now. He said, "Oh, I won't have my lunch," and he did it. Lo and behold, he probably did it a little bit too quickly. 2 days later, I'm driving, actually driving over the Mgani River in the bottom end there. The guy phones me out, "Greg Ash, Oscar, I've got some news for you. I didn't get it all out. You've got to go under the knife again. We've got to chop your ear off." That's why I'm getting much faster. I've got half an ear this side and a full ear this way. So they chopped my ear off under general, but again, it didn't affect me. It didn't worry me one bit. Yes, it makes me look smoother, faster, but it didn't really worry me. I went and raced in the World Championships where who won it? Nick Norton, who won it? Nicholas Norton won it, yeah. Nick won it. And Michelle won the ladies. It was fantastic. Raced there. And then, funny enough, I go to my dermatologist and he said, "No, you've got a little thing on your head here." I said, "Okay, well, take it out." So he takes one of these scoops that gives me local injections. I've had so many injections, my God. And he scoops it out. 1 month later, it comes back and then they do a proper job now. They cut a big slice and take it out. And then I go to Brazil. I race at age 58, 120-kilometer race, 4 days. The first day was 18 kilometers. I lose to this young Brazilian, 28. I'm 58. Second day, I catch up, and I'm 7 seconds ahead. And the third day, and I managed to win by about 7 minutes at 58. Loving life. And then this little thing that this dermatologist took out grows to this. So then I'm back again, having it taken out. So they make me into put my turban on because they have to keep the pressure on because they take skin from here. It's still painful, by the way. And they put it on here, and you just hope it's a skin graft, and you hope it works. And I was working. I kept on walking. I wasn't allowed to do anything for 4 weeks, which is a problem. The only thing I did very well is eating and drinking, and it's a problem. I'm very good at that. Then you can see it's slowly healing, and I know there's load shedding soon. So that's a sort of a summary of my life, because if I had to go down the business route, and then we'd be out all day. My next big mission is I've written a book, or I'm busy writing a book, and it's written by the guy that him and I collaborated, and he wrote the book called Elephant Whisperer. His name's Graham Spence on the top. And it was interesting that Graham Spence, you saw that photograph of Tom Selleck. He was sleeping on the floor next to me in Hawaii all those years ago. So I've known him all my life. And him and I collaborated to write a book, and it should come out in August the 15th. And thank you very much for listening. I don't see too many people nodding off. That's good. Thank you very much, Con. Thanks for coming, and I appreciate you being here.